Okay, welcome to another episode. In this episode, I'm going to be going over a question that came up on one of my videos on the YouTube channel. So I welcome questions. If you have any suggestions for an episode, if you have any questions, maybe some information that you're not sure of, or maybe something that you've heard that there might have been some maybe some controversy to it, or maybe you're not sure if the information you were given was accurate. I would love to hear it, and I would love to make an episode on it. But first, I just want to let you know my book, my third book, the Decoy book, with collaborations with some of the best in the industry, has come out. It's live. It's on Amazon. You look up William Garrido on the search bar on Amazon. My 3 books should come up. I have one book on common myths about dogs. So any myth that you've heard about dogs, maybe you don't even know they're myths, but there's some common sayings about dogs. I go over every single one of them, the most common ones at least, and I debunk them. Okay, so that's the first book I wrote. Second book, it's info every dog trainer should know. In this book, I go over basically a bunch of things that have helped me in the industry. And it's just a collection of articles that I wrote over the years that I put them together in one hard book. And I go over topics from how to avoid burnout to different approaches to dog training, like balance training, e-collar training. And I touch on topics like that. And now this last book, this is the one that I'm most proud of. It's the Decoy book. This one took me a lot of time, a lot of sleepless nights, and a lot of late nights. And it's just such an awesome book. Not because I'm awesome, but because the people that helped me put this project together are really amazing people. People like, Jerry Bradshaw, Dave Croyer, Bart Ballone, a bunch of other like awesome names in protection sports, in different sports, from Schutzen, IGP to French ring to Belgian ring, PSA, and they helped me put this book together. So I do put a lot of my experience on there, but I also interview them, and I put the interviews in that book. And I also interviewed my chiropractor, and I have a chapter on that in the book as well. So I go over, different types of handlers that you're going to be running into, how to get started if you're a decoy or if you want to be a decoy. It's not just sports. I also go over the other route, like police dog decoy applications, military working dog applications. And this also was assisted by another huge name, Franco Angelini, who's not a sports decoy, but he's a decoy / helper in that police and military working dog community. So anyway, it's awesome book. It's already out. I'm going to be working on some audios for that book here in the next couple of weeks or so. But just wanted to let you know those are out there. Look them up. I'm already getting a lot of really good feedback because it's an awesome book. Sound like I'm patting myself on the back a lot, but it truly is a nice book. All right, let me get right into the topic for tonight. So the question is, so the whole comment is, I heard from a few people that dogs at one point in puberty try to establish dominance. Okay, so dogs at one point in puberty try to establish dominance. Females once and males more than once. And they do this by growling or even biting. I thought that people resolve this different today, but supposedly with some, the only way is the short, old school, violent way. So old school training to address dominance, basically. Do you have any experience with that? So that's basically the question. Okay. And yes, I do have some experience with that. I can go in a lot of depth with that. And let's talk about about dogs when they go through puberty. Okay, when they go through their maturity stages. Dogs, all animals really go through a bunch of maturity stages. They go, on their neonatal, their firstborn. Then they go through their first socialization period. This is when they're in the litter. So the first 6 weeks of their lives, that's the first socialization period. This is when they're learning how to be dogs with their litter mates, with their mom. And then you have, typically with the pet dogs, you have the second socialization period, which is between 6 to 16 or 20 weeks. So 6 to 16 weeks. And this is when now they are learning to communicate usually with their owners, their new owners. Typically puppies are leaving the litter around 7-8 weeks of age, maybe 10 weeks of age, depending on the breeder, depending on the situation too. And so between 6 to 16 weeks of age, that's normally when they become more and more aware of other species, people in this case. And they're going through that socialization period, that maturity stage. And then from 16 weeks to about 18 months of age, this is now when they go from puppyhood to young dogs, young adults to adults. And then, between 18 months of age to about 3 years of age, that's when they become full adults. And it depends on the dog. Usually these are loose windows because every dog is different. You have small breeds that mature a little bit faster. You have larger breeds that mature a little bit slower. So there are these windows that you can't say, at 9 months of age, every dog is at this stage. It kind of varies from dog to dog. But typically that's how it goes. Neonatal, first socialization, second socialization period, adolescence. So, they're young dogs, and then they mature into adult dogs between 18 months of age to about 3, some a little bit older too. And then they go into their senior years. So then they go from adulthood to, depending on the dog too, this could be 8 years of age, 9 years of age. Some, it could be even 10 years of age, and maybe even more. When they go from adults to now they become senior dogs. So then they cross into another maturity stage. So dogs do a bunch of different things during these maturity stages. One of the things that happens, which relates to the question here, is at some point dogs do become more bold, okay? Especially males. So the question here is, I heard from a few people that dogs at one point in puberty try to establish dominance. Okay, and let's just quickly break down what dominance is. I know dominance is a bad word in dog training and in dog language. For whatever reason, the word dominance has become this 4-letter word that a lot of people go, oh, it's not real. It doesn't exist. And I would argue that Dr. Roger Abrantes, a scientist that spent a good portion of his life studying animals and canids, would definitely disagree with that statement. Not only him, but other people too, other researchers. Okay, all dominance is, it's just in control of resources. That's all it is. Dominance equals in control of resources. It's not a bad word. It's not like, they're trying to dominate you, or that they're trying to make you their bitch and they're gonna step on you and hump you whenever they want. It's just kind of part of being a social animal. Just part of being an animal that interacts with other animals. Okay, if you look at monkeys, you look at chimpanzees, they are crazy social. Chimpanzees, and I don't mean social with like other species necessarily. If you look at chimpanzees, if you watch any documentaries on chimpanzees, their structure, their hierarchy structure is very complex, very, very intense, where there is definitely dominance, and there is constant climbing, and there is social networks that they make to climb that social ladder. So dominance is a very real thing with animals. That's not a fluffy made up word that that you just don't like. And one really good quote is, science doesn't care about your feelings. You might really feel like dominance is not real. It doesn't matter that you feel that way. Dominance is an actual thing. And really all it is just language. That's really all it is. It's just language, it's communication. So let's just right away get rid of that stigma. Let's get rid of that. Oh, I heard that dominance is not real. If you strongly want to cling to that ideology, to that idea, maybe you just need to do a little bit more research on that topic. But anyway, so rant over. Now let's go back to the topic at hand. So at some point in adolescence, dogs will kind of start showing you some dominance. Here's what happens, right? Dogs, animals in general, as they leave puppyhood, okay, as dogs leave puppyhood, they start to become more confident, okay? Then you have testosterone on top of that, okay? Even females too. It's not just it's not just a hormone that only males get. Females get it too. Okay, so especially with males go through this surge of testosterone. They become more bold. This is one of the big reasons that a lot of people like to suggest neutering, because they're like, well, if you neuter the dog, they won't be as bold. That's a different topic. We can certainly talk about that at a later episode. But that's one of the reasons people go neuter the dog, because once you get rid of the testicles, you get rid of the main organs that produce testosterone. And what the testosterone does is it gives the dog confidence. It also helps with their growth, physical growth. And in that process, it also gives them boldness. Okay? So as males become more confident, more powerful, they get more boldness. This translates into, or this leaks into their other relationships, so to speak. Okay, that will go into how they interact with other dogs. That will go into how they interact with other people. With their people, and you will start to see dogs kind of being a little bit more difficult, a little bit more challenging. This also depends on the dog. Okay, this also depends on the dog. Okay, I'm making kind of a general description here, but it really depends on the dog too. I mean, you have some dogs that will go through that same stage. They get very confident, but they're very, very biddable, very, very easy to work with their person, or just with people in general. So that does happen. But overall, in general, you are going to get that boldness that will translate into, hey, I'm going to push some buttons here. Or I'm going to try to, maybe try to see if I can do this. And even though maybe she doesn't want me to do this, I want to do it anyway, right? So that boldness comes in. And that's where sometimes that turns into, hey, who the heck are you? I am going to do it anyway. I don't care if you don't like it. Now, I'm kind of humanizing a little bit by giving you these sentences. But basically, that's kind of what it's like, okay? I have experienced it with male dogs. I have experienced it with my personal dog. It's just one of those things that happens, and it is the result of maturity, okay? Sexual maturity, social maturity is starting to happen. You're starting to get that boldness. And if your relationship with your dog is already kind of loose, it's not very consistent, you're definitely going to see it. If your relationship with your dog is very consistent, you have a very good structure with your dog, you're still possibly going to see it depending on the dog. With females, you don't see it as much, because that's the thing. Females, the thing that I love about female dogs is they tend to be more biddable. They tend to be, I don't want to say easier, but they tend to be more handler aware, okay, or some people will call handler sensitive. That's not a bad thing, by the way. But females tend to be more biddable. They don't have as much of that wild hair up their ass, as much as males. Now they can. I have seen some pretty crazy females. Matter of fact, we're working with one right now. She's full of piss and vinegar. But in general, females, as they're going through that maturity stage, they don't go through that quite as much. Males become more independent. They will kind of challenge it a little bit more. They tend to give you a little bit more of a hard time, even if they're good dogs. I'm not saying like these are dogs that are going to be very difficult to work with just because they have testicles. They can be very, very easy to work with dogs, but they can, they will have some of that boldness, which translates into, man, why are you doing that sometimes? Again, I've seen it with my personal dogs. I've seen it with some of my club members' dogs. I've seen it with other dogs that I have worked with. And like I said, sometimes, and just like the question suggests, sometimes it's a little bit, it gets a little bit violent, where I have seen dogs go, screw you. Not only am I going to push your buttons, not only am I going to be a little bit more difficult to work with, but I'm going to bring some heat into this as well. I'll give you a personal example. Rust, my personal dog, he's going to be 7 years old here in the next 5-6 months or so. So he's not a puppy anymore. He's an adult. And when he was leaving puppyhood, I want to say it's maybe about 6 or 7 months of age, very young. He's starting to get that confidence. He's starting to get that surge of testosterone. We were just playing ball back and forth. And, every training session was a play session, basically. He was learning something every time. And all of my training sessions with him are very, very motivational. There is like, I'm not like making him do anything. We have our training arranged so that he wins and everything is in his best interest to win. And we have a good relationship. We always have. He can be a difficult dog, but we have a good relationship. We understand each other. He knows the expectations. And we don't butt heads. We really don't. Okay. He definitely could if he was in the wrong home, but we have overall a good relationship. So it wasn't because of this. What I'm going to tell you what happened was not because of this. We had a good relationship. We still do. But right about 6-8 months of age, what happened was we're playing back and forth. He got a little bit of wildness in him. And, as I'm just grabbing the ball, now you might be thinking, well, you were grabbing the ball, so resource guarding. No, it wasn't resource guarding at all. I'm kind of grabbing the ball and getting ready to end the game or to, at least to bring this training to a close, which still very motivational. Even the way we ended it was always very motivational. He always won. And if you think, well, that's the problem, he always wins. No, it's got nothing to do with that. He, at some point, just got a little bit of wildness in him, and he just got pretty violent very, very quickly. He started to kind of push that those boundaries. I didn't trigger it. Nothing was done to him where you could say, well, that was justified. He just got full of piss and vinegar, and he started to just get mouthy, and then he very quickly escalated to being a bit violent. Okay, so how do you address this? At the moment, I don't have a leash when this is happening. I don't have a leash on him. Or maybe I did. I don't remember. It was such a long time ago. But I'm not holding him, even if I do have a leash on him. So I'm just very neutral, very calm. His mouth is snapping in the air, not puppy play. I've seen the Malinois puppy play. This wasn't it. This escalated into something pretty serious with him. So finally, I got a hold of him. He just keeps going. Okay, and as he keeps going, like pretty violent, pretty hectic. I just give him like a few good corrections. I'm like, dude, we're done. That's over. Now, had my corrections been very soft, like, hey, hey, take it easy, it probably would have escalated it. Okay. So I had to give a correction that was enough to cap it. Okay. You don't want your corrections to agitate, because if your corrections are ineffective when they're warranted, but they're ineffective, they're nagging, you can escalate, you can activate the dog into more power. So sometimes the corrections have to be capping corrections. So that's what I did. I gave him a capping correction. It was over with. And then we were fine for like the longest time. We were fine. We're perfectly fine. Like the order had been restored. And we were back to what we were earlier that day. Everything was fine. And we were fine and great for, again, several months until he was about a year and a half or so. Now he's still maturing, still getting that surge of testosterone. He's still growing into that sexual, social maturity. One of those times, same thing. He had this surge of, full of piss and vinegar, and he's like, oh yeah, and now he's got this boldness behind him, and he got pretty pumped. Very inappropriate, and had to give him that correction, those capping corrections. And it's what some people sometimes will call come to Jesus meetings, right? Sometimes doctrines will call it. You had to come to Jesus meeting. Now, the capping corrections, my corrections are they're corrections. That's what they are. They're pop and release. And I give it when my dog was behaving like this, they had to be firm, emphatic corrections, like, we're not messing around here. Okay. That's as old school as I'm gonna go. I have seen people hang dogs. I would never do that, right? I have seen people pick their dogs up straight up off the ground and hold them there, like all four paws in the air. I've seen people like do that until the dog like nearly passes out. And I'm not talking about defensive handling. I'm talking about corrections. I've seen people slam helicopter dogs. I talked about this in the previous episode or 2 episodes ago. I've seen people slam dogs, kick dogs, and their justification is, well, he got crazy. So he challenged me. He tried to establish dominance. So I had to win and I had to be the boss. You don't have to go like that. I mean, that's very overboard. That's very over the top. I've never, ever done that with Rust. I've never felt compelled to do that. And Rust, I know we have a great relationship, but I know he has it in him to be very, very difficult. And so those were really the only 2 times. There was another time, like maybe about a month, 2 months ago, where he got, again, very piss and vinegar like, and just, one correction, and then we're back to normal. But those are the times where I would say, you hear people say, oh, your dog will challenge you. Your dog will, dog will try to establish dominance. And you could call it that, or you could just call it your dog is just going to that maturity stage where they are basically figuring out their place. Okay? Now, it happens less often if you have a good, consistent relationship. It will happen more often, like you will always be fighting with your dog, if you don't have a clear and consistent relationship. I have seen that too. I've seen dogs that have potential to be amazing dogs, like awesome, awesome dogs, but their handlers and them don't have consistent communication. They don't have consistent relationship. And then it turns into like this game of going back and forth, and they always find themselves fighting with their dogs. I've seen this with pet owners. I've seen this with people who own working dogs, and I have seen it with dog handlers, professionals, okay? Dog handlers, people that work with these working dogs regularly. I have even seen it with them. So the more consistency, the more clarity you have, the less you're going to see it, and the less of a shit show is going to look like when it does happen. Okay, but yes, that does happen. And like I said, I in his 7 years, I can really honestly tell you, like, that's happened maybe like twice. In his 7 years, that's only happened twice, and they quickly got addressed. And if you knew Rust, you would know he's not an easy dog. He's not like this biddable dog where, he only did that to you twice because he's a softie. No, he is not a softie. He can be a very difficult dog. He's a very intense dog, has a lot of piss and vinegar behind him. And yeah, he absolutely could have done that way, way more. So the times that I've seen people go to the old school technique, it's when the relationship wasn't even fully there to begin with. But with females, does it happen? Yes, it can happen with females too, but not quite as often. Females tend to be softer. They tend to be more biddable. And again, the thing that I want to emphasize is you don't have to go old school. Okay, like the time that I will go quote unquote old school is if the dog has already made up his mind that he's going to hurt me. Whatever reason. Maybe I miscommunicated. Maybe the dog didn't feel comfortable with me, or maybe the dog is just flat out saying, screw you. Who the hell are you? Who the hell, I don't even know you. Why are you even here? And those times they've also been minimal. Again, not with my dog, but with the dogs where there is no relationship and you're trying to establish some relationship, you're trying to build a reward history, and suddenly you cross that line and that dog goes, hey, I don't know you. And then they make up their mind, I will hurt you. Okay, I'm not like, I'm afraid, so I'm going to bite him. No, like the dog is flat out saying, you're going to pay. And the only time that I will kind of go into anything resembling quote unquote old school is just to defensive handle myself. Like I'm doing that. Like I'm now holding the leash up so that your teeth don't make contact with me. Literally, so your teeth don't make contact with me. Okay. Or I'll do that or lift up if the dog is already on me, or if the dog is on somebody else, right? And I have to now choke that dog up. And now this is more of a quick management, defensive handling situation, but not for training. Okay, I have seen people go, aggressive dog, not a big deal. Hand them to me and give me a rubber pipe. Aggressive dog, not a big deal. Give it to me, and also give me a stick. I'm gonna take care of that very quick. All right, if you're using those techniques to train, something is wrong with your system. Okay, I'm not saying I'm never gonna give a hard correction, but if I do, like, these are not like training approaches. These are like, oh crap, defensive handling time. I'm about to get bit if I don't do this. Okay, those are the times that'll even get maybe as close to old school training as I will say, maybe that resembles that. Okay, but other than that, I'm not doing any of that crazy stuff. I couldn't do it. I couldn't hang a dog. I couldn't like helicopter a dog. I couldn't slam a dog from one side to the ground. I couldn't just kick that dog into submission. I just couldn't. I couldn't grab a stick, a baseball bat, and just beat that dog into the corner like I've seen some people do. I just could not. I couldn't bear it. I couldn't see myself doing it. When I see people doing it in videos, I cringe. When I hear people that they say they do that or that they've seen that, I couldn't picture myself doing that. But there are people that do feel comfortable doing that. Again, this is something I talked about 2 episodes ago on the ethics of corrections, where I talk about some people look at it as very animal husbandry type of thing where it's just an animal and that's how you do it. I'm not at that point. I don't foresee myself ever going into that point. But some people feel comfortable doing that, and we call that typically old school training. But anyway, so hopefully this answered your question. For everybody else, if you wanted some clarification on this episode, or if you have another topic of suggestion or another question, let me know, and I'll be happy to make an episode on it. All right, see you in the next episode.